In the year 180 AD, something happened that should have been impossible. A force of northern tribes crossed Hadrian's Wall, overwhelmed Roman defenses, and destroyed an entire military command. The greatest empire on earth had built a massive stone barrier stretching across Britain. Thousands of soldiers guarded it. Watchtowers scanned the horizon. Forts stood ready for war. Yet none of it was enough. When most people imagine Roman soldiers, they picture shining armor, glorious victories, and disciplined legions marching beneath golden eagles. But the reality on Hadrian's Wall was very different. Here, life was measured not in glory, but in cold rain, hunger, exhaustion, and survival. If you had arrived at this frontier at 20 years old, you would have faced 25 years of military service on the edge of the known world. Many never completed that journey. Some fell to raids, others to disease. Many simply wore down under the endless weight of frontier life. Tonight we uncover what it truly meant to serve on Hadrian's Wall, and why surviving there was far harder than any battle Rome ever fought. Hadrian's Wall began as one of the most ambitious military projects in Roman history. Ordered by Emperor Hadrian in AD 122, the wall stretched across northern Britain from the River Tyne to the Solway Firth. Thousands of legionaries from 3 major Roman legions quarried stone, dug ditches, and raised fortifications across some of the harshest terrain in the province. Yet the men who built the wall were not the men who spent their lives defending it. Once construction ended, the legions departed. In their place came auxiliary soldiers, drawn from every corner of the empire. These men were not Roman citizens. They were recruits from distant provinces who served Rome in exchange for the possibility of citizenship after 25 years of service. Some came from Belgium. Others arrived from the Rhine frontier. Men from Dacia in modern Romania found themselves stationed thousands of miles from home. Perhaps the greatest shock belonged to the Syrian archers. Raised beneath the warm skies of the Near East, they suddenly found themselves guarding a windswept frontier where winter storms rolled across the hills for months at a time. The wall itself was a remarkable achievement. Rising roughly 15 Roman feet high, it stretched nearly 80 Roman miles across Britain. Mile castles stood at regular intervals, while observation towers filled the gaps between them. Massive forts anchored the line, housing soldiers, supplies, and command centers. In front of the wall lay deep defensive ditches. Sharp obstacles slowed intruders. Behind it sat the vallum, an enormous earthwork, creating a military zone unlike anything else in the Roman Empire. On paper, it appeared impossible to penetrate. Reality proved otherwise. Life here was dominated by weather. Northumberland's climate challenged even the toughest soldiers. Cold rain swept across the hills. Powerful winds battered exposed positions. The dark months of winter seemed endless. Archaeological discoveries reveal what soldiers truly worried about. At Vindolanda, hundreds of wooden writing tablets survived in waterlogged soil. These remarkable documents preserve the voices of ordinary people stationed on the frontier. One letter records a shipment of socks, sandals, and undergarments. Another contains an urgent request for beer. Neither sounds particularly heroic. Yet these messages reveal a deeper truth. The men serving on Hadrian's Wall were not thinking about conquest or glory. They were thinking about staying warm. They were thinking about dry clothes. They were thinking about whether supplies would arrive before the weather became even worse. One tablet even preserves a complaint about poor road conditions. Roman engineering was famous throughout the ancient world, but northern Britain still found ways to defeat even the empire's best roads. Imagine arriving from Syria or North Africa and discovering that your daily existence involved standing watch in freezing rain on a stone wall at the edge of civilization. Would you have adapted, or would you have counted every day until your service finally ended? Let us know in the comments. Which frontier of the Roman Empire do you think would have been the hardest place to serve? But difficult weather was only the beginning. The true hardships of life on Hadrian's Wall were still waiting. Every soldier needed food, and the Roman army supplied enormous quantities of it. The men stationed along Hadrian's Wall consumed beef, mutton, pork, chicken, grain, and whatever local resources could supplement military deliveries. Records from Vindolanda reveal a surprisingly diverse supply network. Soldiers had access to olives, olive oil, wine, fish sauce, beans, apples, and even oysters transported from distant regions. At first glance, the diet appears impressive, but these supplies served entire garrisons rather than individual soldiers. Daily meals were practical, repetitive, and often uninspiring. Even Emperor Hadrian reportedly shared basic military rations, consisting of bacon fat, cheese, and posca, a sour, vinegar-based drink commonly consumed by Roman troops. Food filled stomachs. It did not make life comfortable. Neither did military pay. An auxiliary soldier earned less than a Roman legionary. On paper, the salary appeared respectable. In reality, deductions consumed a significant portion of those earnings. The army charged soldiers for clothing, boots, equipment, horse fodder, food, and other necessities. Contributions to unit funds came automatically. Seasonal expenses appeared regularly. By the time deductions were complete, roughly 40% of a soldier's wages could disappear. Some lost far more. In extreme cases, only a fraction remained available. Even then, soldiers often could not freely access their savings. Much of their money remained tied to military accounts until discharge. And discharge came only after 25 years. Imagine joining at age 20. You would not complete your service until around 45. For many auxiliaries, citizenship served as the ultimate reward. 25 years of loyalty transformed a non-citizen into a Roman citizen, with legal rights, marriage recognition, and citizenship for future children. Many soldiers never returned home after receiving that reward. Instead, they settled near the forts where they had spent most of their adult lives. Their homes became the frontier itself. Daily life revolved around the Contubernum, a group of 8 soldiers sharing living quarters. Barracks were cramped. Personal space barely existed. Equipment filled storage areas. Soldiers slept beside men they might spend decades serving alongside. Senior officers enjoyed comfortable residences with heating systems and running water. Ordinary soldiers did not. Communal bathhouses offered occasional comfort, but most daily life involved crowded rooms, smoky braziers, and harsh weather. Even the toilets reflected military practicality. Running water flushed communal latrines, while shared cleaning tools replaced anything resembling modern hygiene. Training never stopped. Roman military doctrine demanded constant readiness. Soldiers marched long distances carrying heavy loads. Practice weapons often weighed more than real ones. Standards remained demanding, even on supposedly quiet frontiers. Failure brought consequences. A soldier who performed poorly could receive humiliating punishments, including reduced quality rations. And despite all that effort, survival remained uncertain. Life expectancy in the Roman world was shaped by disease, accidents, and limited medical knowledge. Historians estimate that roughly 1/3 of soldiers who began service at 20 would never reach retirement age. That statistic excludes major combat. Simply existing on the frontier carried serious risks. 25 years suddenly feels much longer when every season brings new dangers. As you listen, consider this question. Would Roman citizenship have been worth 25 years on Hadrian's Wall? Many soldiers clearly believed it was. Others may have wondered whether the reward justified the cost. Either way, the dangers waiting beyond the wall would soon remind everyone why Rome maintained such a powerful military presence in northern Britain. For most of its history, Hadrian's Wall was not a battlefield. It functioned primarily as a border control system, regulating movement, trade, taxation, and security. Raids, theft, and occasional violence occurred regularly, but large-scale invasions remained relatively rare. When they did happen, however, the consequences could be devastating. The crisis of AD 180 demonstrated this reality. Northern tribes breached Roman defenses and destroyed an entire military command. Archaeological evidence suggests widespread disruption across several frontier sites. Rome responded by sending Ulpius Marcellus, a commander known for strict discipline and military effectiveness. Order eventually returned, yet the incident exposed a dangerous truth. The wall could fail. And when it failed, soldiers stationed there faced terrifying odds. The Roman government experimented with alternative strategies. For a time, attention shifted northward to the Antonine Wall in Scotland. But maintaining that frontier proved difficult, and Rome eventually withdrew back to Hadrian's Wall. The pattern repeated itself throughout the centuries. Periods of stability alternated with crises. In AD 197, political conflict elsewhere in the empire weakened Britain's defenses. Troops departed to support imperial ambitions abroad. Frontier security deteriorated rapidly. Later, Emperor Septimius Severus personally arrived in Britain with a massive army. His campaigns pushed deep into northern territory and temporarily restored Roman authority. Even that success proved temporary. The greatest disaster came in AD 367. Historians call it the Barbarian Conspiracy. Multiple groups launched coordinated attacks across Roman Britain. Picts advanced from the north, raiders struck from Ireland, other forces attacked coastal regions. The frontier system nearly collapsed. Recent climate research suggests severe drought and resulting food shortages may have contributed to these upheavals, demonstrating how environmental pressures could reshape history. Eventually, Roman commanders restored order, but each recovery seemed slightly weaker than the last. Meanwhile, another enemy operated continuously inside the forts themselves: disease. Archaeological studies reveal widespread intestinal parasites throughout Roman Britain. Evidence from Vindolanda shows that even soldiers living in relatively advanced military facilities suffered from worms and other infections. Running water existed, bathhouses existed, medical staff existed. None of those things eliminated disease. Roundworms, whipworms, and intestinal infections affected large portions of the population. Conjunctivitis irritated soldiers' eyes. Respiratory illnesses spread through crowded barracks. Dysentery and chronic infections weakened bodies over years of service. Many soldiers survived these conditions, but survival often came at a cost. The body slowly deteriorated under decades of exposure, poor weather, hard labor, and recurring illness. Military discipline added yet another threat. Roman commanders valued order above almost everything else. One of the most feared punishments was fustuarium. A soldier found asleep while on guard duty could face execution at the hands of his own comrades. The purpose was simple: maintain absolute vigilance. Other punishments included fines, beatings, demotions, and public humiliation. A lifetime of service could be damaged by a single serious mistake. Imagine spending 24 years obeying every order, enduring every winter, surviving every crisis, only to lose everything because of one violation. That possibility remained very real. What do you think would have been harder to endure? The threat beyond the wall or the discipline within it? Share your thoughts below. Because for many soldiers, daily life involved balancing both dangers simultaneously. The wall stood between Rome and uncertainty. Yet the system maintaining that frontier demanded constant sacrifice from the men who served there. Cold weather, disease, exhaustion, fear, discipline. Together they formed a challenge far greater than any single battle. And despite everything, thousands of soldiers built lives on that frontier. Families grew, communities emerged. Entire generations came to call Hadrian's Wall home. Beyond the forts, civilian settlements known as vici developed along the frontier. These communities transformed Hadrian's Wall from a purely military installation into something far more complex. Merchants arrived, craftsmen opened workshops, families established homes. Taverns served travelers and soldiers alike. Archaeological surveys suggest some settlements supported hundreds of residents. Children grew up beside military fortifications. Women managed households and businesses. Local economies flourished around the needs of the garrison. Evidence from Vindolanda reveals shoes belonging to women and children, along with toys and personal belongings that paint a vivid picture of everyday life. This was not simply a military frontier, it was a living society. Religion reflected that diversity. Temples dedicated to Roman gods stood alongside shrines honoring local deities and foreign traditions brought by soldiers from distant provinces. Worshippers honored Jupiter, others followed Mithras. Some maintained connections to Celtic religious traditions. Syrian soldiers introduced beliefs from their homeland. The result was one of the most multicultural communities in the ancient world. People from Syria, Spain, North Africa, Belgium, Dacia, and Britain lived side by side. Their stories survive in remarkable documents. One of the most famous is a birthday invitation written by Claudia Severa to her friend Sulpicia Lepidina. The letter contains one of the earliest surviving examples of Latin written by a woman. Its words feel surprisingly modern. Friendship, affection, anticipation. Human emotions preserved across nearly 2,000 years. Other tablets reveal complaints, requests, business transactions, and military reports. Together they transform history from distant events into real lives. Perhaps that is what makes Hadrian's Wall so fascinating today. Not the stone, not the battles, not even the empire itself, but the people, ordinary men and women navigating extraordinary circumstances. If you could spend one day anywhere along Hadrian's Wall at its height, which location would you choose? A military fort, a civilian settlement, or a bustling frontier market? As Rome entered its final centuries in Britain, however, even these thriving communities faced an uncertain future. By the early 5th century, Roman authority in Britain was fading. Imperial resources were stretched across multiple crises. Troops were withdrawn, communication weakened, funding declined. Eventually, Rome stopped paying many of the soldiers who had guarded the frontier for generations. The wall remained. The empire behind it did not. Coins recovered from frontier sites suggest Roman occupation continued into the early 400s, yet official support gradually disappeared. Something remarkable happened next. Rather than abandoning their forts immediately, some local leaders remained. At Bertiswald, archaeological evidence indicates continued occupation long after Roman administration collapsed. Former officers may have transformed into local rulers. Military strongholds became centers of regional authority. The frontier did not suddenly vanish. Instead, it slowly evolved into a different world. Rome left Britain, but Britain did not leave Hadrian's Wall. When most people think of Rome, they imagine conquest, triumph, and military glory. Hadrian's Wall tells a different story. It tells the story of endurance. For nearly 3 centuries, soldiers stood watch on a cold frontier far from home. They faced harsh weather, exhausting labor, disease, uncertainty, and the constant demands of military discipline. Most never became famous. Most never commanded armies. Most simply endured. Some survived long enough to earn citizenship and build new lives beside the wall they had spent decades defending. Others disappeared into history, leaving only fragments of letters, worn shoes, and forgotten names preserved beneath the soil of northern Britain. Their experience reminds us that empires are not sustained by emperors alone. They depend upon ordinary people willing to perform extraordinary duties day after day. Thank you for joining us on this journey through life on Hadrian's Wall. And before you go, tell us in the comments, do you think you would have survived 25 years on Rome's northern frontier? Subscribe and join us for the next chapter, where we continue exploring the hidden realities of the ancient world.